Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm Rahmadani Sahrima, and this is about the morpheme. As we know, the word is not the smallest part in the phrase, but under the word there is still a smaller part, namely the morpheme. And a morpheme is the smallest part of a word. The field of grammar that studies the structure of words and the relationships between words involving the morphemes that compose them is technically called morphology. So, in general, morphemes are divided into two types based on the number of morphemes, and namely, the first one is monomorphemic, is a word that contains one morpheme. For example, chocolate, a dog, car, and etc. And the second one is polymorphemic. Polymorphemic is a word that comes from more than one morpheme. For example, racehorse, linguistics, and etc. Okay, the next is bound morpheme and free morpheme. So, bound morpheme. Bound morphemes are morphemes that can only be attached to other parts of the word or cannot stand alone. For example, is li, able, full, on, this, and pre, and etc. And the next one is free morpheme. Free morpheme is a morpheme that can stand alone and function as a root word. For example, run, sing, play, large, read, perform, and etc. And the next one is morphemes, roots, affixes, and joining forms. The first one is the root is the smallest morpheme that can stand alone and is the core of a word. For example, is listening, singing, reading, and etc. And the second one is affixes. Affixes are morphemes that cannot stand alone and must exist. And affixes are added at the beginning, beginning, middle, and at the end of the root. And affixes are divided into three. The first one is prefix. Prefix is affix added at the beginning of the word. And for example, is re, on, in, and etc. So the second one is affixes. Affixes are affixes that are added in the middle of the root word. This type of suffix is rarely used in English, and for example is as, freaking, and etc. The third one is suffixes, which are added at the end of words and usually create new words with new meanings, but can also change grammatical functions. For example, happy as adjective to happiness as noun, and clear as adjective become clear as adverb. And the next is combining. Combining form is a combination of two or more words with a different meaning. So combining forms are also divided. The first becomes ordinary. Ordinary is compounds which combines more than one free root, and for example, bookcase, motorbike, and etc. And the second one is merging two bound roots, for example, electrolysis, microscopy, and etc. And the third one is merging one bound root with free root, for example, cranberries, microfilm, and etc. And next, allomorph is a variation of difference in pronunciation of a morpheme. Allomorph form is always associated with suffixes. For example, the suffix as has three allomorph forms: as, is, and is. Based on the sound produced before adding the suffix, there are three different allomorphs. The first one is allomorph. Allomorph is occurs the suffix is added after free root, which sounds like a his. Example: horse, horses, rose, roses. And the second one is allomorph s, occurs when a suffix is added after a free word sounds voiceless or does not produce vibrations on the vocal cords, like cat, cat, rock, rock, cup, cup. And the third one is allomorph z, occurs when the suffix is added after a free root sound or produce vibrations. The example is day, days, dog, dogs. So another very common suffix in phonology is the suffix used in past tenses, which is always a verb. And the allomorph is t, d, or id, ed. This allomorph is the same as the previous example, namely allomorph as and is. Allomorph ed is grouped into three, namely allomorph 1 is occurs if a suffix is added after a free root that is sounds voiceless or produces no vibration. For example, ask, ask. Ed here will produce a T sound. And the second one is allomorph D, occurs when a suffix is added after a free root sound or produce vibration. And for example is lift, lift. Ed here will produce sound D, lift, lift. Okay, the third one. The third one is allomorph ed or id. For example, need, needed. So next, identifying morpheme independently of meaning. Slightly different types of lexical conditioning can be introduced by means of the possible re and allomorph prefixes. In this section, I will explain the use of ra and an in different meanings. First, prefix an can be added to almost any verb. Consistently, which means again. And for example, return, rewrite, reread, revisit, and etc. The second one is prefix ra tends to be limited and requires. And context has the meaning of again, backward movement. For example, restore, and store again. Return is turn again. And for example of sentences such as like I turned the sticks on the BBQ a minute ago and I'll return the soon. This return means flipping, which refers to the BBQ earlier, be flipping BBQ. I think that's all for me. Thank you so much. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.